Friday, March 13th on Days of Our Lives looks like the kind of episode where everything shifts at once. A desperate search gets dangerously close to the truth. An unexpected embrace changes the emotional meaning of a whole storyline. And one confrontation may blur the line between attraction and suspicion in a way that could make things even more complicated going forward. So the real question for Friday is this: when the truth finally comes to the surface, who will feel safe, and who will realize they never were? Let's begin with the image that may leave viewers talking the most heading into Friday. Stephanie in Jeremy's arms. That is the kind of spoiler beat that immediately changes the way an audience reads the whole story. Because after a week built on fear, confusion, suspicion, and constantly shifting assumptions, this is not the image viewers were necessarily expecting to end on. It is softer, more intimate, more emotionally loaded, and precisely because of that, it may be one of the most important clues about where this storyline is really going. All week long, this arc has been shaped by instability. Stephanie has been trapped in a dangerous situation where every second has mattered, every move has carried risk, and every wrong assumption could have made things worse. At the same time, Jeremy has existed under a cloud of suspicion. His name has been tied to doubt, tension, and the possibility that he was more dangerous than he seemed. So when Friday suddenly gives us this image, Stephanie not fighting him, not recoiling from him, but ending up in his arms, the emotional meaning of the story shifts immediately. Because on a soap, an embrace is never just an embrace. It can mean rescue. It can mean relief. It can mean exhaustion after terror finally breaks. It can mean one person has become the first place another person feels safe enough to collapse. But it can also mean something even more significant, that the audience has been encouraged to look in one direction while the emotional truth of the story has been moving in another. That is what makes this moment so effective. If Stephanie ends up in Jeremy's arms, then something has clearly changed between them. Maybe it is not romance, at least not yet. Maybe it is simply trust born from survival. Maybe Stephanie has reached that point where the body reacts before the mind does, where fear gives way to pure emotional release, and the only thing left is the need to breathe, to steady herself, to feel that she is no longer alone inside the danger. That kind of reaction would feel very believable after the kind of pressure this storyline has created. You can almost picture how the scene might unfold. A door opens, voices rise, everything that has been held in suddenly crashes down at once. Stephanie may be trembling, running on adrenaline, and barely holding herself together. Jeremy reaches her, and instead of pulling away, she falls into the moment. Maybe her voice breaks as she says something like, "I didn't think anyone would get here in time." Maybe his response is low and steady, "You're safe now. I've got you." That kind of exchange would fit perfectly because it gives the audience what the storyline has been withholding for days: emotional release. But of course, because this is Days of Our Lives, viewers are not going to see that embrace and simply think, "Problem solved." They are going to ask what it means. Does this confirm that Jeremy is not the true threat after all? Does it suggest that Stephanie now sees him in a completely different light? Has survival created a bond between them that did not exist before? Or is this exactly the kind of Friday image designed to make viewers question every assumption they have been carrying all week? That is where the scene becomes even stronger. Because once Stephanie is shown leaning into Jeremy rather than resisting him, the emotional logic of the story changes. Suspicion starts giving way to ambiguity. Ambiguity starts turning into intrigue. And suddenly the audience is forced to reconsider not only Jeremy's role, but the entire shape of the danger itself. Who was really protecting Stephanie? Who was really threatening her? And how much of this story have we been reading wrong? That is why this moment may be one of the most revealing of the week. On the surface, it looks soft. It looks comforting. It looks like the kind of emotional payoff viewers have been waiting for after days of fear. But underneath that softness, it may be doing something far more dramatic. It may be repositioning the entire storyline. Because in Salem, one embrace can change everything, not just for the characters in the scene, but for the audience trying to understand what the truth has really been all along. So yes, Friday's image may feel tender. But beneath that tenderness, it may be one of the sharpest turns this story has taken yet. Now let's move to the search itself, because Friday may also deliver the moment when Steve and Brady finally get close enough to the truth to change everything. Spoilers say they track down Stephanie's kidnapper, and that is exactly the kind of Friday setup that should make viewers both excited and nervous at the same time. Because on a show like Days of Our Lives, tracking someone down does not necessarily mean the danger is over. In many cases, it means the danger is just reaching its most volatile point. And that is why this part of Friday's story matters so much. This has not been a clean investigation from the start. Steve and Brady have not been moving through a straightforward trail with clear answers and obvious villains. Instead, the week has been filled with uncertainty, shifting suspicions, false leads, and the nagging possibility that the wrong person may have been blamed too soon. That kind of setup makes the search feel much more tense, because by the time the heroes finally get close, the audience already knows there is still room for one more twist, one more mistake, or one more terrible second that changes everything. That is where the suspense becomes especially powerful, because getting close to the truth is not the same as reaching safety. In fact, the closer Steve and Brady get, the more dangerous the situation may become. A captor who senses time running out can become reckless. A plan that was holding together can suddenly collapse. One final confrontation can bring answers, but it can also bring desperation. And desperation is what makes a scene like this so unpredictable. You can almost feel the urgency already. A location is confirmed. A look is exchanged. Brady's voice sharpens. Steve's instincts kick in. Maybe Brady says, "This has to be where she is." Maybe Steve responds, "Then we move, no mistakes." There is that familiar Friday energy in scenes like this, where everything feels like it is narrowing into one final chance. And what makes it work so well is that Steve and Brady do not bring the same energy into the search. Steve brings experience. He brings control, patience, and that steady sense that he knows how dangerous the last few minutes of a rescue can be. Brady, on the other hand, brings raw urgency. He brings heart. He brings the kind of emotional intensity that makes every second feel personal. Together, they make the rescue plot feel balanced in a very effective way. One man is trying to stay sharp, while the other is already feeling the emotional cost of what could happen if they are too late. That combination gives the storyline weight. Because this is not just about finding the right place or catching the right person. It is about whether they can reach the truth before the truth turns even uglier. It is about whether the person they are chasing realizes the net is closing. It is about whether Stephanie will be found at the exact moment she still has a chance to walk away from this with something of herself intact. And that is why Friday's search feels so tense. The audience is not only asking, will they find the kidnapper? They are also asking, what condition will everything be in when they do? Will they arrive in time to stop something terrible? Will they walk in just as the whole situation begins to spiral? Will the confrontation expose the real threat, or reveal that the truth has been more complicated than anyone wanted to believe? Those questions are what make this storyline work on a Friday. Because Fridays are not built for neat resolutions. They are built for heightened stakes. For the feeling that everything is closing in at once. For that last-minute rush where one wrong move can still turn victory into tragedy. That is exactly the kind of energy this search seems to have. Steve and Brady may finally be close enough to make a difference. But the closer they get, the more likely it becomes that the most dangerous moment has not happened yet, because the final stretch of a rescue is often when panic, truth, and violence all collide at the same time. So Friday's search storyline is not just about payoff. It is about pressure. It is about whether persistence finally brings salvation, or whether the truth arrives in a form far more painful than anyone was prepared for. And in Salem, that difference can change everything. Finally, we get to what may be Friday's most emotionally layered and potentially most dangerous scene: Kat confronting EJ. On the surface, this sounds simple. One character wants answers, and another character may be hiding the truth. But on days of our lives, a scene like this is never just about information. It is about power. It is about control, and most of all, it is about what happens when suspicion gets tangled up with attraction. That is exactly why this confrontation feels so important. Kat is not walking into this conversation casually. By Friday, too much has already happened for her to treat EJ like an ordinary man with ordinary secrets. Questions are circling him from every direction. His name keeps hovering too close to too many dangerous developments. And even if Kat does not have every answer yet, she likely has enough instinct to know that something about EJ's version of events is not adding up. That alone gives the scene tension. But what makes it truly compelling is that Kat may not be confronting a man she feels nothing for. And that changes everything. Because the most dangerous confrontations on a soap are rarely the ones built on pure anger. They are the ones where anger is mixed with curiosity, emotional pull, and just enough chemistry to weaken someone's guard. If Kat were dealing with a man she completely distrusted and emotionally rejected, this could be a much cleaner scene. She could accuse, push, and walk away. But with EJ, nothing is likely to be that simple. He is polished. He is persuasive. He knows how to speak in a way that makes even the most suspicious moment feel strangely intimate. He knows how to turn a defensive position into a personal one. And he knows that when someone comes to him full of questions, the best way to survive that pressure is not always to fight it head on. Sometimes it is to redirect it. That is where the danger begins. You can almost picture the tone of the scene already. Kat steps in guarded, tense, determined not to let him control the conversation. Maybe her eyes lock on his immediately. Maybe her voice is steady, but only just. Maybe she says something like, "No more evasions. No more carefully chosen words. Tell me what you're really hiding." That kind of line would fit this moment perfectly, because by Friday the emotional temperature between them should be high enough that every word lands harder than usual. And with EJ, the reply is never likely to come in a clean, direct way. He may deny everything with calm confidence. He may act as though Kat is being unfair. He may look almost hurt that she would question him at all. Or, perhaps most dangerously, he may do what EJ does best: answer just enough to keep her engaged, just enough to make her hesitate, just enough to blur the difference between confession and manipulation. That is why this scene has so much dramatic potential. Because Kat may walk in believing she is there to confront him, but the longer the scene goes on, the more possible it becomes that she is the one being emotionally drawn into his rhythm. Every answer he gives may sound smoother than it should. Every pause may feel loaded. Every look may carry more meaning than the actual words being spoken. And suddenly, the scene is no longer just about whether EJ is lying. It becomes about whether Kat can still trust her own instincts while standing this close to someone who knows exactly how to unsettle them. That is the real emotional trap here. Not simply that EJ may be hiding something, but that he may be skilled enough to keep Kat emotionally off balance while he hides it. And that is a much more interesting kind of danger. Because if Kat feels even a little drawn to him, then suspicion becomes harder to hold on to cleanly. She may want the truth, but part of her may also want to believe him. She may hear warning bells, but still hesitate when the moment gets more personal. She may recognize that she should step back, but find herself leaning deeper into the conversation instead. That is the kind of emotional contradiction that makes Days of Our Lives work so well. Two people can stand in the same room wanting completely different things, and yet still be pulled together by a tension neither of them fully controls. Kat may want answers. EJ may want control. Kat may be trying to protect herself from being fooled. EJ may be trying to make sure she stays just uncertain enough not to walk away. And somewhere in the middle of that clash, the confrontation can start to shift. A sharp question becomes a quieter one. A denial turns into a longer stare. A moment of accusation becomes a moment of emotional hesitation. And that is often where a soap scene becomes most powerful, not when someone finally tells the truth, but when both people stop saying exactly what they mean and start revealing themselves in more subtle ways. You can almost imagine a beat where Kat presses him again, waiting, searching his face for a crack. And instead of giving her a full answer, EJ steps closer emotionally, not necessarily physically, and says something that changes the tone of the room. Something like, "You want the truth? The truth is you already came here hoping not to hate me." That kind of line would be classic EJ. Because it does two things at once. It avoids the real question, and it forces Kat to confront her own emotional vulnerability. That is why this confrontation matters so much. It is not just exposing how suspicious Kat has become. It may be exposing how deeply EJ is already getting under her skin. And once that starts happening, the scene becomes much more than a confrontation. It becomes a turning point. Because if Kat walks away still suspicious, that is one thing. But if she walks away suspicious and emotionally shaken, if she leaves with more questions, more doubt, and more connection than she had when she walked in, then EJ has already won something important, even without giving her the truth. That is the real trouble here. Not that Kat may fail to confront him strongly enough, but that the confrontation itself may deepen the very bond that makes him harder to resist. And on a Friday episode, that kind of emotional complication is exactly the sort of thing that can carry serious fallout into the next week. So yes, this scene may be about secrets. Yes, it may be about suspicion. But even more than that, it may be about attraction becoming dangerous. Because once Kat starts getting pulled into EJ's orbit emotionally, walking away becomes much harder than asking the first question ever was. So overall, Friday, March 13th looks like the kind of Days of Our Lives episode that brings fear, truth, and emotion into the same hour. One embrace changes the emotional meaning of a whole storyline. One search races toward a breaking point. And one confrontation grows more personal, and more dangerous, with every word. That is what makes Friday feel so strong. Not because every secret is guaranteed to come out at once. But because this is the episode where too many feelings, too many questions, and too much danger all get close enough to collide. So heading into Friday, the biggest question is simple. When the moment of reckoning finally arrives, who will be standing in the truth? And who will still be trying to outrun it?